Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to Fit Body Secrets. Time to give you guys some tips, trips, like that. I'm kind of tired of the whole, let me put an intro in here. I just like to get started into my stuff. I'm going to go ahead and get myself live on Instagram. So if you're watching the replay or you're on YouTube, give me a second here. Make sure I'm live. Yep, I'm live. I just heard myself talking. Good morning. All right. I got a good topic today because, and this one actually was sparked from one of my clients, but first, sip of the old coffee. By the way, if you've been watching me on YouTube for a long time, or even on my Instagram, and you've noticed that I've had like 3 people message me within the last year. This is like a coffee mug I've had forever. They said, "Do you still have the price tag on the bottom of your mug?" And I'm like, or the barcode scanner. I'm like, I think I do. It's been washed. It's on the bottom side. So you put it in the dishwasher, it doesn't fall off, and I wash it. I don't really wash the bottom of it, I guess. But I finally took it off. And I was surprised there was no like sticky residue. So if you were watching, you'll notice now when I tip my cup, it's gone. So I took some initiative, took some action, and no pun intended, I ripped the Band-Aid off. Oh, good morning. I see somebody saying hello. Hello, Miss Holly. I saw you on the Primal WOD app this morning when I was logging in. I just started the Primal WOD app. If you guys are looking for, not sponsored, but if you're looking for a good mobility program that's very relevant to CrossFit, strength training, stuff like that, just getting you more but just obviously safer in those deeper ranges of motions of that a lot of our movements. I'm off on a tangent, but if you're looking for a good mobility program because you like to lift heavy and you like to do really fun things in the gym that require a lot of mobility, Primal Mobility has got some good stuff there. I've been very happy so far with the program, which is going to we're talking recovery today. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. No more of this little talk. Well, okay, I've got one more thing I got to talk about before I get into today's topic. I had the weekend from hell because I did not have a phone. I don't think anybody recognizes how much our lives are intertwined with technology and social media and the phone in general, and how many things we do from our phones. I don't know. Well, my phone it was an iPhone 12. It was on its way out. It was a 12 Pro, but it was on its way out. And I just honestly have been like not wanting to get a new phone. It's been working fine. However, it was like starting to show signs that it was getting to the dead zone. You know, it was just like it was overheating a lot and stuff like that. Anyways, Saturday night, getting ready for bed, it fell out of my hand. Now the iPhones are pretty resilient. It's been dropped a number of times at the gym. But this particular time, I watched it fall, and the way it fell right on the corner, and that was it. Done. Donezo. No more phone for Coach Cheryl, and turned off right away. It was the weekend from hell. Oh, though, let me tell you, this happened at 7:30 on Saturday, and Verizon doesn't close until 8. So you know what I did? I got my car. I hopped right over there. I'm like, you know what? Just going to upgrade the phone. I get there. The guy pretty much lied to me and told me that they didn't have any iPhones left, right? Like, you don't have iPhones. Like, come on. I'm not retarded. Anyways, told me they didn't have any, that I had to file an insurance claim. Insurance claim said my phone's not going to be here till Monday afternoon. I'm like, what am I going to do? Like, I work for my phone. So I was super frustrated. Anyways, long story short, I use my phone for everything. I use it to help me sleep. I listen to a podcast in the background to like keep me, because I have horrible sleep issues. Use it for my job. I use it for everything, social media. And Sunday morning, I was so anxious, but it was also a reminder of like, wow, like I need to also be not so dependent on this thing. However, because I'm so dependent on it, when I went to the Apple or the Verizon store, I bought a freaking iPad too, because I needed a backup. That if my phone breaks again, I have another way to stay connected besides my computer. So anyways, let's get rolling into today's topic. I just had to vent about that a little bit. So it was such a horrible weekend. All right, guys, we're going to be talking about recovery today. I'm going to go over to my notes. If you guys have any questions about recovery, anything that I'm talking about, or maybe things that you're experiencing that you're not quite sure how to handle, please feel free to shoot a question, comment in the chat. And I will kind of, glance over at that. I have like 3 or 4 different tabs open. I've got Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram all up here. So I'll have to kind of go back and forth. So just make sure that you make a note of what you're asking me about reference to so I can remember. I am usually kind of good about picking it up, but sometimes I don't. And the real main thing is why are we talking about recovery? Likely because you're training in the gym and maybe you're not seeing the results that you're looking for, and you're questioning, am I doing enough? Am I doing too much? Or maybe you're feeling burned out, which is another common thing that people experience. Is they're like, man, I feel like I have to keep going, and I just feel like I'm a little bit burned out, and I'm afraid to take time off. There's kind of two ways to look at this. It's like, am I getting enough training response in to validate enough recovery, or am I doing so much that I'm not recovering? And I want to really demystify a couple of things today, give you guys some things to consider, and obviously how recovery does impact your adaptations in the gym, which is what I want to talk about first and foremost, is the purpose of recovery. I think most people think that the training in the gym is what causes things like improvements in your fitness and muscle building. However, it really isn't. There's 2 pieces of it: the training and then the training response. And the training response is where fitness adaptations, muscle building adaptations, and all of that stuff happens. And that's why recovery is so important, because if you're throwing your head, through the window in the gym, and you're like pushing really, really hard in every workout, and you're getting that stress response, if you don't have the adequate recovery from it, your body's not going to get fitter in the future. Similarly with muscle growth, if you're breaking down your muscle tissue in the gym, but you're not getting adequate nutrition and recovery to allow your body to remodel those muscle tissues, you're not going to be getting the return that you're looking for. And the best analogy I like to use is, the thing that always comes to my mind is, imagine you just had shoulder surgery, and the surgeon says, hey, we're repairing 3 different things in your shoulder. You can't use your arm for the first 4 weeks, because we just have to let those tissues sit and rebuild, right? And then we're going to restore gentle range of motion, and then we're going to restore strength. On a much lesser degree, that's what happens in the gym. Your muscle fibers are being torn down. Your central nervous system is being pushed to its limits. And then your body and your brain have to get the signals that I've got enough recovery to allow these things to recharge. There is a physical and a mental adaptation that has to happen, and that happens during recovery. This is also where hormones balance out, your energy gets restored, and you mentally reset from your training. So I think that if you're a hard gym goer like I am, it's really easy to just be just suck it up, buttercup, just keep going, keep going, keep going. And surely you can, but at some point, regression starts happening. And we'll talk about why tracking metrics is so important here. Now, I want to make a short tangent here to talk a little bit about overtraining, because I think that a lot of people, when they think I'm not recovering enough, they're like, I'm overtraining. Overtraining is a very, very, very hard thing to do. What it normally comes down to is overtraining is really something that happens from years and years and years of chronically beating your body into the ground, and that causes a lot of negative things. However, you can see some acute symptoms of overtraining in a much more milder way if you're just increasing volume too quickly. So I get this a lot with people that decide to start running. High rocks is a big thing now. They're not running at all, and now they're running 8K a day. It's okay, your knees and your tendons and your ligaments are not conditioned to all of that volume. So overtraining is just usually because somebody either has not taken enough recovery, or they increased their training volume significantly too quickly. However, it's very hard to get into an overtrained state because your body and your brain have so many protective mechanisms. People that are prone to overtraining are going to be your high-end athletes, or people that have been an athlete for years and years and years. It doesn't really usually happen to the typical population. However, there are some things that can impact your recovery from your training that might make you feel like you're overtraining. And one of them we're going to talk about, which is nutrition. I want to talk a little bit about nutrition to start, because that's probably going to be the biggest thing when we talk about recovery. Most of the people that come to me for nutrition advice come to me for, obviously, for reaching goals with fat loss, performance, or whatnot. You're active, right? You're training in the gym. You're whether you're doing CrossFit, you're doing F45, you're doing Orange Theory, you're doing your own bodybuilding split, you're walking, whatever you're doing, you're very active. And what I find to be the common issue with recovery in terms of workouts is not getting enough nourishment. So, and this is very common if you have fat loss goals, because people put themselves in too much of a deficit. And then what happens is your body's not getting the nutrients it needs to recover from your workouts. So being in a calorie deficit for fat loss is not just about slashing calories. If you slash calories too much, especially if you want to be able to see performance gains in the gym, you're not going to be able to perform the way that you want to, and you're not going to be getting the fitness adaptations that you want to. Now, if you have a significant amount of body fat on you, you can get away with being a little bit more extreme in your deficit in the beginning, but eventually it's going to fizzle out. And that's why I always recommend, no matter if you have 50 pounds to lose or you've got 10, that you take a modest approach to your fat loss journey. But this really happens with recovery when women have spent a long time cycling through calorie deficits, and their body has just adapted and their brain has adapted to believe that they need to be eating much less calories than they actually need. In fact, I made a post last night on social media. I was going through some history. I was doing some reflection yesterday, and I was looking back at my nutrition spreadsheet from when I was working with one of my coaches back in 2016. And I was eating like half the amount of carbs that I am now. And back then I thought I was recovering. And I even kind of looked back to kind of assess my volume, and my volume in training hasn't really changed at all since then. So it's not like I increased my workout significantly since then. I just started eating more, but my body had adapted to that, and I wasn't recovering. And that was why I reached out to the coach. So I'm like, I know something's just not right. Like, I've got anxiety. You know, people don't realize how recovery shows up outside of just, you know, what you see in the gym. You show up and all of a sudden your squats feel heavy. It's also like showing up outside of your life. You're tired all the time. You're irritable. You're moody. You're hungry. You're not hungry. Your gut's off. But anyway, so nutrition is probably one of the biggest things. Is you've got to make sure that you're eating enough. I think that a lot of people go through all of these tactics to try and get them to burn more body fat. So things like fasted workouts, or, you know, not eating carbohydrates, or, you know, timing, you know, not eating around your workouts, or saving calories for later in the day. All of these things are negatively impacting your recovery from your training. Okay. So you need to make sure that your energy intake is matching your output. If you're going into a deficit, two things: you're doing it in a moderate way. So you're not just slashing calories, and you're not spending years and years and years being in a deficit. You've actually learned how to optimize your nutrition at maintenance, or you're taking some breaks in that deficit. And then I think the other thing is looking at, if you are training high volume, okay, you need to recognize that you need to be eating enough fuel to support that. If you're training for 4 hours a day and you're worried about the scale, you're not doing yourself a service. You need to either reconsider your goals athletically and say, hey, like, maybe this body composition fear that I have is hindering my ability to chase the goal that I have for myself. And I want to stay stuck here, and I need to give up my athletic goals, because training at that kind of a level and not feeding yourself enough is a risk for injury, burnout, and stagnation. You're not going to get anywhere. Okay. I think the key point here when I talk about the mistakes is like, what I'm talking about recovery, and I'm starting with leading with food, because food is honestly the one thing that keeps people under recovered. If you're not getting enough nourishment, that's one of the biggest things that can fix your recovery. So if you don't know how much you should be eating, you need to take time to deliberately figure that out. If you're afraid of eating too much and you're, you know, coming out of a fat loss phase, you're going through a fat loss phase, you need to be thinking about your recovery long term. I think people are so afraid of eating too many calories, when calories are literally energy. A calorie, the definition of calorie is a unit of energy. And energy is what your body needs to recover. So this is why I'm opening this whole topic today on recovery with, are you eating enough? If you're not eating enough, you're going to be under recovered. Okay. Now I get it. Like in a deficit, you should be slightly hungry. You might see, I'll be honest, I'm going to argue you should not see negative feedback in the gym. And I only can say this because I work with, I should say I work with now. I work with now around 80 people, but I've worked with thousands and thousands of people who have been through my program who report PRs over and over again in the gym while being in a fat loss phase. So I would like to argue with those people that tell you that when you're in a deficit, you're going to see that your strength goes down. You're going to see that your performance goes down in the gym. I don't believe it. I think that's bullshit. I think it means that person was in too much of a deficit. Okay. Just a little tangent on there. Let's talk about some of the factors outside of nutrition. And I opened with nutrition because that's the easiest one for you guys to fix. You have the most control over it. It's the easiest to apply. But let's talk about some of the factors that are also going to influence your recovery. Number one is your training age and your experience. Okay, so a beginner versus an advanced athlete is going to recover very, very differently. So perfect example of the whole overtraining thing. If I have not done any fitness, okay, and I go into the gym and I'm training and I just go from 0 days a week to 6 days a week of CrossFit, I am risking overtraining if my body is not used to that adaptation. However, somebody who's been training for years on end can train for 6 days a week and not get overtrained, right? The volume you can handle is much different as you age in your training. So you have to recognize that as well. I think that it's really important for people to differentiate between, like knowing when you need to do less and when you need to just make sure you're taking a more gradual ramping up into doing more. With CrossFit in particular, okay, the CrossFit program was designed by nature to be done 5 to 6 days a week. That is the sweet spot for CrossFit. However, like the volume of what we do in the gym 5 to 6 days a week is very different than what a lot of people do when they're going 3 or 4 days a week. So it ends up averaging out to be about the same. So you need to look at your training age and your experience. Also looking at some of the central nervous system adaptations that happen. So like when you're learning new skills and obviously you're adapting to new movement patterns, there's an acquisition of adaptation that has to happen. So that requires a little bit more central nervous system recruitment, maybe a little bit more time, a little bit more recovery there, okay? Another thing that impacts, number two, impacting your recovery, and this is a big one, hormones, specifically for females, your female hormones and your menstrual cycle. Ladies, I'm going to start with saying you do not need a special program for going through perimenopause or going through your period. You don't need to be syncing up your training with your cycle. You don't need any gimmicky shit, okay? You need to understand how to gauge what's going on with your body by the signals it's giving you, all right? When all of a sudden your appetite's creeping up and you're like trying to white knuckle your way through the day, that's a sign that you probably should be eating a little bit more, okay? Like when all of a sudden you're getting ready to start warming up and you just feel kind of crummy and you see 1 rep max deadlift on the board, but your back is feeling a little achy, not the time to be going for a new PR, right? It's like you have to learn how to listen to your body, but your cycle does impact your recovery, your strength, and your appetite. The changes in progesterone. So estrogen is your body's natural anti-inflammatory. When your estrogen levels rise and fall, you're going to see changes in your inflammation markers. You have to understand it's not about you having a special program, but those things do impact it. So if you're a CrossFitter, I got this last week from one of my clients. She's like, I had a horrible week at the gym. Couldn't hit any of my lifts, was well under percentages. My running felt horrible. And on my check-in form, there's a part that says, are you premenstrual? And she put yes. Okay. That's expected. The more you learn how to just expect, hey, I'm not going to feel great today. If I do better than I anticipated, that's what I'm going to do. In fact, I do this all the time right now with myself because my sleep right now is up and down. It's like, I have good weeks and bad weeks. And if I wake up and I know that I didn't sleep well, when I go to the gym, I'm like, okay, this is my basic, I'm going to move through this. If it feels better, I'm going to push. And a lot of times I exceed my expectations. So lower your expectations on those weeks. Okay. I think that it's really important that you stay consistent with your training. I think that people think that, oh, if I'm not recovering in this because of my period, that I should just stop training. And I think what's better is just adjusting the intensity and keeping yourself moving. That's actually better for recovery, because going back to how adaptations happen, that's giving your body and your brain the signals that, hey, this is what I can handle. And you start managing that a lot better. Another thing that impacts your recovery is sleep and stress. Okay. So as I just mentioned, so if your sleep is crap, you're not going to be feeling great. That's when your muscles are repairing. Mentally, you're not going to feel as sharp. Hormone balance, like a lot of things are going on. In fact, a lot of people are like, well, I'm not doing anything at night, so I shouldn't be eating before bed. Yo, your body is so active when you're not awake. Like all the things your body cannot do while you're awake, it's doing while you're asleep. In fact, there are moments of paralysis at night just so that your body can make sure that it is in a completely rested state to be able to repair and things like that. But you need to make sure that you are watching sleep. If you have chronic sleep issues, you need to also really manage your intensity in the gym. You know, what kind of loading you're lifting and lowering your expectations. Your body, if you have chronic sleep issues, will adapt to that. And you just have to reset your expectations off of what your body is actually going through right now. I think another big thing that people don't realize that impact your recovery, because we just always focus on like the physical stuff, is the hidden stress that happens in our life and our daily demands. You know, when you're thinking about work stress and family stress, traveling, all the other stressors that are going on in your day, that's all impacting your recovery. Like when I've had a very stressful day or I have a stressful day coming up, my workouts just don't feel as good. You're not going to feel as present. It's more your body, when we talk about stress response, doesn't know the difference from a hormonal perspective as to where the stressor is coming from. It's having the exact same response. It's like turning on a switch 3 different ways. You can just, that's how you can think of it. It doesn't matter how you turn it on, you got it turned on. Okay. So you have to recognize that other lifestyle factors are going to impact your recovery. And I already mentioned this, but nutrition quality matters. Or I mentioned nutrition, but I haven't mentioned nutrition quality and timing. I mentioned a little bit about the under eating, but more specifically, you need to be taking in the right types of nutrition around your training. This is not about the anabolic window of getting protein in within 30 minutes of your workout, but it is about understanding how muscle protein synthesis works and making sure that you have the amino acids available for muscle repair when your body needs them most. It's also looking at the glycogen depletion that happens after a workout and making sure that we are taking advantage of that and shuttling in more glycogen when your body needs it. It's, you know, like I love this thinking this way. This is so stupid, but it's a great analogy. Is imagine your car is on empty and it's 10 o'clock in the morning and you're going to wait until 7 p.m. to put fuel in it, but you really need to get out of the house at 10 a.m. Like that's what you're doing. And then you're overfilling it at night when you're like, it doesn't make any sense. Your body needs nutrients earlier. And then also looking at the impact of the food quality that you're taking in, because micronutrients are also what helps with energy metabolism. A lot of your vitamins and minerals are what helps make energy metabolism happen. Macros are what matter most, but micros helps make macros more impactful. They have to work together, okay? So let's talk about how to gauge your recovery. And I'm just kind of looking down here what else I have because I don't want to skip anything. All right. And I want to go back to saying that, remember that when we talk about recovery, we have to look at recovery not just isolated to our workouts. We want to look at all of the factors that are playing into your recovery. Okay. So signs of adequate recovery are you should be feeling energized and you're not super sore every single day. You will have soreness. And in the beginning, you're going to have more soreness than others, but you need to make sure that you are monitoring that. Like I will be honest, I don't know that I've gotten like, the only time I get really sore right now still to this day is if I've done a lot of lunging or a lot of chest to bar pull-ups. Like those two things will probably leave me really sore because I don't do them in high volume very often. But you should be feeling energized. You should be feeling not super sore. From metrics perspective, you should be seeing strength improvements and performance improvements. So you want to be taking a look at that, or at least staying consistent with those numbers. You should be able to consistently be hitting the numbers that you've been hitting previous weeks. You should have a pretty good mood, sleep, appetite, and motivation. So when you're looking at your training volume and you're asking yourself, all right, am I, getting enough recovery from my workouts? All of these things are what we should be looking at. Okay. Signs of poor recovery are you're tired all the time, you're hitting plateaus, your performance is declining, you're irritable, you're having a lot of sleep issues, maybe you're having a lot of illnesses or injuries. These are all signs that you're not recovering enough. And as I mentioned, and I'm going to keep going back to it, it's important to look that your recovery is not just about you doing too much in the gym. It might be about the stressors outside of the gym, under eating, other stress that's impacting what you're getting from the gym, which is where people kind of go wrong in that they're like, oh, I'm not recovered enough, so I need to pull back in the gym. I need to stop doing so much in the gym. That might be the case if you're doing 6 days a week, 4 hours a day. But if you're training at a level that you've been training at for quite some time, you need to be looking at the other factors that are impacting the gym. And rather than skipping the gym, it might be modifying to adapt a little bit better to the current stressors that you're experiencing outside of the gym. We want to dilute the intensity a little bit to get you making forward progress with what you're having to handle right now. Okay. So let's talk about some other tools you can use to also gauge recovery as well. If you wear like a Whoop band, a Fitbit, a Garmin watch, something like that, this is where some of those things can be helpful. The Whoop band in particular does a pretty good job with recovery in that it does assess things like your sleep, your HRV, and your resting heart rate to help you figure out your recovery score. However, we are all different with what we can mentally handle. So I always recommend whenever we're looking at like metrics from any kind of like data, like calculations and obviously gadgets and stuff like that, that we want to also take into consideration the intuition of how we feel. However, if you're seeing that like your trends of your resting heart rate are going up over time, maybe your HRV is going down over time, those are signs that maybe you are under recovered. Also looking at, like your motivation in the gym, how are you feeling with your motivation in the gym? Are you getting chronic injuries? Are you finding yourself always kind of like dealing with some kind of a little bit of a nagging injury? And then, just kind of looking at all of that stuff when we're assessing recovery. So I think the main thing and the main takeaways that I want you guys to hear from today, well, let's kind of talk about training volume first, and we'll kind of go into the takeaways. How much training do you actually need? I think that's where we really need to talk about. Because when we talk about recovery, we need to look at recovery from the training volume that is adequate to allow you to see the change that you're looking for. For most people, okay, I think that 4 to 6 days a week of training for 60 to 90 minutes a day is well more than you need. Some people can get away with 30 to 60 minutes. It just really depends on your training age, along with how much you actually enjoy working out. Some people like fitness. You are the ones that are more likely to be questioning, am I recovering enough right now? Because you are doing so much in the gym. You need to make sure that your nutrition is adequate enough to allow for you to recover from it. So that's the main thing. You don't want to be putting all that work in the gym and be worried about eating too much. If you're doing more training, you need to be fueling that training. But for most people, if you're training 4 to 6 days a week for about an hour a day, you're doing a CrossFit class, that is not too much training. If you're feeling like you're not adapting to it and you're listening to this, maybe you are newer to it, and maybe you need to start with getting consistent with 3 or 4 days a week and then adding from there, or sprinkling in changes in intensity. So like, even as I mentioned, the CrossFit model was designed to be 5 to 6 days a week, but it wasn't meant to be every single day was, going balls to the wall as hard as you can. There was meant to be sprinklings of lower intensity days built in. So make sure that you're balancing your training, which is actually what's more important. So when we're talking about recovery, and I'm going into some takeaways, the main key point here is you should be balancing your training. It shouldn't always be super hard and heavy. It should be, okay, I'm working at percentages of RPE, like RPE being rate of perceived exertion. I like that more than percentages of lifts because, again, that can be impacted by how we feel for the day, right? I think that it's important to also look at that. I get questions about deloads, like should we take deload weeks? I think that honestly, I don't really like people to program in deloads because I think deloads happen naturally, right? If you have a weekend where you're going to be out of town, that's a natural deload. You might be doing some lighter activity stuff. If you have a vacation, if you get sick, they kind of happen naturally. So I think it's more important to listen to your body and your schedule than like, oh, it's week 4, I've got to take a deload. Because what if week 4 you feel great? And you're like, man, I've got the best sleep ever than I've had in, 3 months. And now I'm going to deload. Like, I don't like doing that. You've got to like kind of look at how your body is responding and what your schedule is allowing for. But like definitely schedule in rest days. You should, okay, let's just be real. You should all have a rest day a week. Everybody needs a rest day a week. Even the top level athletes take rest days. You need to be having a rest day. Okay. Make sure that you're tracking sleep, stress levels, looking at other variables. And then going back to the hormone thing, making sure that you're cycling your training intensity a little bit. Don't feel like you have to always push super hard if you're not feeling good. Lower your expectations there. And the main thing here, guys, is listening to your body, okay? We are all so, in fact, as I open this podcast talking about how attached we are to our phone, we are so detached from intuition, like so detached to what it feels like to be feeling good. We just live our lives never actually experiencing feelings. We actually distract ourselves from them, right? So you have to listen to your body. And sometimes if you're finding yourself being somebody who's like training 5 or 6 days a week and you're like crushing it in the gym every day and you're noticing that things are regressing, you might be getting that feeling like I'm not doing enough. You probably are somebody that needs to pull back a little bit. Vice versa. If you're training 4 or 5 days a week and things just aren't feeling that great, you might just need to be looking at other areas of your life that might be impacting your training and your recovery. Okay. So, I think that the last thing that I want to touch on here is understanding that recovery is just not time off from the gym. It's not just like, you're not going to recover if you just don't go to the gym. In fact, you're going to recover worse if you do that. I think it's important to understand how recovery is making sure that you're getting enough sleep, making sure that you're looking at stress management, making sure that your training has purpose. It's not just doing random workouts. It's actually following a program, that you're not overtraining yourself. I like love this too. I'll get people that are like mixing 3 different programs. They're doing this athlete program. They're doing this gymnastics program. They like pick one program and follow the program. And then making sure that you're eating the right amounts for you. Even if you're in a deficit, you're trying to lose weight, you need to be smart about your food timing, about how you're cycling your calories, and making sure that you're not spending too long in that deficit. And also just knowing that you need to listen to your body. So I think if I can give you guys one takeaway for today, it's just honestly looking to really pay attention to maybe 1 or 2 signals that you have been getting from your body and seeing how your body is responding to those things. So maybe it's like appetite, or maybe it's sleep, or maybe it's energy and mood. Like whatever you're noticing is off, paying attention to those things and trying to adjust it. So for instance, with this client in particular that asked about this episode, I believe she was coming off of her period or just starting her period. And she was telling me that she had tried to go for a 1 rep max deadlift and her body wasn't feeling it. Okay. So that's a good sign that like, okay, I'm more prone to injury on my cycle. My body is a little bit more fragile. So going into next month, the week of my, I'm going to get my period, I'm going to make sure I'm a little bit more mindful about my lifts, and I'm not going to worry about pushing high percentages that day. I'm going to keep the weights a little bit lighter, maybe do a little bit more aerobic based training and do that. In fact, something I didn't touch on today, but the athletes that recover the best, do you want to know what the common denominator is? They have a very, very, very strong aerobic base. Like the more, and that's where the zone 2 training has gotten so much hype amongst athletes, because the more of those slow twitch muscle fibers you develop, the less prone you are to injury. The more stress volume, the more volume your body can handle. It definitely makes it a little bit easier. There's a fine tipping point to it, because you do too much, you're going to blunt your power output. But cycling in, if you're somebody that you're hearing this, you're like, man, I hate those long workouts. You probably should be doing a little bit more of the lower, slower stuff. Okay. That's all I got today. I'm going to hop over for questions. Do I have any questions so far? Does anybody have any questions on recovery? As I'm talking a lot about recovery from workouts, training, questions on how to gauge your recovery that I didn't already cover. Some interesting names on here. I see Rock on here. Judy's on here. Kristen's on here. I don't know if you're still on here. Do you guys have any questions on recovery that I haven't already covered? Well, let me just end on this then. Don't avoid carbs. Carbs are the key to recovery, especially if you do high intensity training, because protein gets a lot. I know y'all know protein's important, but here's what happens if you're missing carbs. All that happens is your body's going to convert protein into glycogen. There's a process that your body will go under that will take the protein that you're consuming and convert it into sugar. So you need protein, but you need carbs too. So don't skimp out on the carbs. All right. That's all I got today, guys. I know I got a little bit rambly in the beginning, but that's just me. So deal with it. If you guys have any questions about nutrition, training, life, or you just want to connect with me and shoot the shit, please feel free to shoot me a message, shoot me a DM, and I will talk to you guys on the next episode.